presence of the NGOs present here today. Representing the COCAP, Ms. Esther Perez de Tagle, the Convergence Group, Esther Pacheco, Earth Savers Movement, Roger Birosel, Greenpeace Asia, Bo Bacongis, and the Manila Observatory, Attorney Gia Ibay, with its members Corito Fiel, Socorro Lamoglia, Juan Bautista, and John T. Lamoglia, and as well as the members of the EMB and the United Nations Awardee for Environment, Attorney Tony Oposa. I rise to bring to the attention of this august chamber a crisis of global proportion, one that the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies warns as the greatest threat to humanity today: global warming. The Secretary General of the International Federation, Marco Niscala, said last week, and I quote, "In recent years, we have seen a dramatic increase in the number of weather-related disasters. But beyond this, climate change is also having a very real and very worrisome impact on water supplies, on food production, even on health crisis." The global view on global warming has undergone its own evolution in half a century, since a few brave souls contended, amid public scorn and ridicule, that human activity may be burning too much fossil fuel and igniting forest fires that unleashed lethal greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. The stages of development can be generally broken down into 4 phases. First, it was considered a hoax. The second stage moved scientists, climatologists, and public leaders to give it a faint recognition. It was discussed, but only grudgingly and marginally. The third stage pushed global warming into the mainstream of scientific studies and research. Finally, it has sunk into the global consciousness. Then came the day of reckoning. In a landmark event on February 2nd, 2007, the 4th stage came in the form of a public statement released by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which undertook a 3-year study on global warming and climate change. The United Nations Environment Program and the World Meteorological Organization created the panel, which members included hundreds of scientists, climatologists, and researchers around the globe. They were unpaid. They did the work for Mother Earth. They were considered as among the world's the best and the brightest, 3 of whom are present here today in their line of work. The report said climate change was unequivocal. The report also raised realistic but dire scenarios on what will be the planet's future if nothing is done to reverse this. February 2nd, 2007 will be remembered as a date when uncertainty was removed as to whether humans had anything to do with climate change on this planet. "The evidence, Mr. President, is on the table," said Akim Steiner, the executive director of the UNEP, who briefed journalists and the public on the report. Seas, according to the report, will continue to rise. Temperatures will continue to climb. The weather patterns will be shifting and erratic, tipping to the extreme, not the mainstream. While seas rose by about 6 to 9 inches in the entire 20th century, the report forecasts a sea rise of 7 to 23 inches by 2100. Sea level rise is particularly lethal to small islands. It will exacerbate inundation, storm surge, erosion that threatens roads, bridges, dams, homes, entire settlements, and the facilities that support livelihood of island communities. Global temperature is likely to warm 3.5 to 8 degrees Fahrenheit if carbon dioxide concentrations in the atmosphere reach twice the levels of 1750, which was before the Industrial Revolution. There is more than a 1 in a 10 chance of much greater warming, a risk factor too high to be ignored. In many parts of the globe, these findings are real life, real-time apocalypse. What do I mean? Drought in Sudan has triggered war in Darfur, the first recorded war in history that was rooted in rainfall decline. Blood freely spilled into the parched, cracked earth of Darfur. Last year, Tokyo had its longest snowless winter. China had the warmest year in 30 years. A total of 13,500 square kilometers of ice shelves in the Antarctica disintegrated. The Thames Barrier, the underutilized flood defense system of London, was forced to defend London from floodwaters at an unheard of utilization rate of 6 times last year due to increased rainfall. The Antarctica is melting at an alarming pace. Water from this melt is enough to bury coastal towns along its rampaging path. At home, all the dire warnings about global warming are no longer empty words. Climate change is now a serious public issue, trumping the massively funded but inherently abhorrent initiative that also carries the word change, charter change. Floods and droughts, heat waves, and super typhoons regularly strike us with their attendant savagery. All of these kill people, wreak havoc on property, upset our production and planting schedules, and gnaw on the economic foundation of the nation. We no longer have a climate pattern, the comfort of a rainy and dry season splitting half of every year. Now, it is all about weather in extremes. The quantified economic impact of intensifying tropical cyclones on property has been placed at a yearly average of $4.5 billion from 1975 to 2002. This figure comes from a study conducted by Dr. Leoncio Amadore titled Crisis of Opportunity, Climate Change Impacts in the Philippines. The impact of extreme weather patterns on forestry, biodiversity, coastal and marine resources, water, energy, and health has yet to be given peso and mathematical equations. But the toll is definitely high. If developing countries are more vulnerable to climate change, the Philippines, due to its place in the geological order, has the misfortune of facing the highest degree of risks, a country deemed most vulnerable to change by experts. It is located within the Pacific Typhoon Belt. It is highly susceptible to ground movements like landslides and mudslides. Remember, in December of 2003, more than 200 people died from landslides and flooding. In 2004, there were 412 deaths recorded after Typhoon Winnie lashed at the eastern seaboard of southern Luzon. A total of 177 people were reported missing and presumed dead. In February of 2006, more than 2,000 people, mostly kids, attending class, were buried by mudflow in St. Bernard, Ginsaugon, southern Leyte. For 3 days, rain pounded the town, triggering mudflows that created a pocket of Armageddon. In September 2006, Super Typhoon Milenio jolted a totally unprepared Metro Manila and nearby provinces, killing at least 18 people and cutting a vast map of destruction. The rise in sea levels will strike hard on the Philippines, with 70% of its towns and cities, including the most economically vibrant, classified as coastal areas. Food production, perhaps the most important economic activity of the country, is also directly threatened. Long dry spells and savage floods are the equivalent of food shortage and a high level of food insecurity. The Philippines, which has a high or a wondrous biodiversity and holds an unenviable pool of genetic stock,